Sheepbytes through places like the Maryland Sheep and Goat page have been very positive, and I think that if you get to know the product, you'll enjoy working with it. The first thing I want to mention tonight is that we don't have time tonight to talk about the basics of sheep nutrition or solve any nutritional problems. We're totally focused on the application of this particular piece of software. However, there are a number of resources out there now, and because things are more and more web-based, other people are stepping up to the plate. So this PowerPoint slide I've got on my screen right now, I hope you can see that. There's a book called manual called Sheep Feeds and Feeding in Western Canada by Dr. Steve Mason out of Calgary. Steve developed the first version of this document when he was many years ago, when he was with the BC government as one of their provincial sheep specialists / nutritionists. And I've used it over that version for many years and distributing it to clients and so on. And he recently came up just before the end of the year with a revised and updated version. It's very good, lots of pictures, lots of good documentation. So a good resource that I think that you would enjoy using, and it probably should be in every sheep producer's library if they're serious about nutrition. The second thing is here, our email addresses for Barry and I are at the bottom here of this slide. Dale Engstrom at engstromdf@gmail.com, and Barry's is there as well. So if you have any follow-up questions or concerns that you'd like to address with us relative to the Sheepbytes program, that's our contact information. We'll put that up again at the end. So Sheepbytes, what is Sheepbytes? Let's start off by how you access it. And on my screen here now, we should be able to see what is basically comes up when I load up my Google browser. And I've already got it as one of my go-to addresses here. But if you just type Sheepbytes into a browser, something like that, it'll come up and get us where we want to be. So it'll show us here, for example, we'd have to go down and search a little bit here, and you would find the Sheepbytes in your list there. So here it is, Sheepbytes Ration Balancer. We can click on that, and we're into what I call our opening page. Now, anybody can go here. You don't have to be a registered user or anything. You can go here and see what the program is basically about. It works on Chrome, it works on Firefox, and it works on Safari for Mac users. It'll probably work on other browsers too, but I know for sure that those 3 browsers are pretty compatible and friendly to this program. The pricing for the product, if you want to buy it, individual pay $100 initially and a $50 annual renewal fee. For that, you can balance and store up to 25 rations. For the commercial version, it's a $200 upfront fee with a $100 renewal. And there's no limit to the number of clients or the number of rations you can store in the product. So if anybody's in the feed business or consulting business, veterinary clinic, et cetera, and wants to have a nutritional file for each of their clients, they can certainly be accommodated. Capabilities, let me just overall comment that, of course, it's a ration balancing program, so it can balance your rations from starting from scratch, or you can enter a ration that you're currently using and check to see how it lines up with in terms of nutritional requirements versus what you're feeding. We can use it to diagnose potential nutritional concerns or problems. So again, if you put your ration in and you start to see the deficiencies pop up, then you can help solve some health problems related to nutrition. It has the capability of costing. Totally, you've got to enter the appropriate data, but you can track the costs of your feeding program, any particular ration, a combination of rations, a full annual feeding program, as long as you put in the appropriate data. It can also be used for inventory control or utilization. So if you put a series of rations together for the various stages of production that you go through and do this feed summary report that we'll eventually show you how to do, then that would give you a total amount of feed used per, for example, and you can see how that compares to the number of bales you've got out there in the stack yard or the bushels of grain you've got in the bin type of thing. We can also use it to create total mixed rations, TMRs, and we can also use it to create grain mixes, the grain mix portion of the ration being fed separate from the forage in that particular situation. For feed company personnel, it can also be used to create the specs that you need to design supplements and premixes. And of course, then you can play around with it and look at different options for feed costs. It's not a least cost program. It's called ration balancing by the substitution method. So you have to get in there and know a little bit about basic nutrition or have a few basic principles when you start off. So from the login page here, you don't have to log in. You can go through a number of things, and Barry is going to take you through with his screen and show you what some of the features that you can explore before you even log in or purchase the program. So Barry, can I turn that over to you?
Thank you, Dale. The nice thing about this program is there's a lot of stuff on this front page that be helpful to get started with the program. So for example, the one thing that is very useful right off the start is to click on the demo button. It'll give you the information on what you can do. There's 3 different feeds on the page, 4 different rations. But what I'll do is, instead of reading everything over, I'll show you what you can do with the program. So I'm going to go down to the bottom and click to launch demo now. You've got a file that has 4 demo rations in it. You click on the plus button to show them. And so if you want to go to the mature ewes late lactation, you click in the corner box, open the ration. And there's the ration that you have. It'll give you all the different amounts of feed that are the specifications on the energy types of the feeds that you have, the cost per unit, nutrient profile of each feed. As it comes up from the basic starting position, you can see you've got a net energy of maintenance and net energy of growth specification for the energy content. If you're more comfortable using the TDN and digestible energy values, click on the light bulb and that will change it automatically. The nice thing about this program is you've got all your ratios, your calcium phosphorus ratio, your tetany ratio, NDF as a percent of body weight intake, a number of other different ratios on the bottom. If you want to keep those up, great. If you don't, you can click on the ratio button and it will disappear. I prefer to keep it up unless my screen's getting full of feeds, and then I go ahead and remove the ratios while I'm working. You're always entering the amount of feed in the as fed pounds basis if you're working with hay and other supplements. Some people do work on a dry matter basis, but I find it a lot easier to work with how many pounds am I actually putting out in front of the animal rather than trying to translate it back and forth. The alfalfa hay here, for example, at 3.5 pounds, if you want to change it to 4, you just click on the cell, get the value, and it shows a different number once you punch it in, and your nutrient values change at the same time. There's a little red arrow in the top corner when you go ahead and change a value in that feed. So for example, if you wanted to go over and change your calcium value because you've got a feed test result that you want to play with, you can go in and put 0.7 and it'll show up with that red diamond in the corner as well, and your calcium values change as well. So this one, you've specified the animal type as a mature ewe lactating. You can look at the different feed tables that the feed table that is given with the program. This one's showing up with just the basics. You can expand it across to, I think, can you, I don't, yeah, there. You can expand it to show other nutrients as well. But for simplicity's sake, on the start, just leave it as is. If you're adding a feed on a normal program, you would see that it would be either add or in. The other things that you can do with this is look at the feeding information, how many animals, number of days, what's your yardage cost? Is it a homegrown feed or a purchased feed? What's your cost? How many pounds do you have? If it's a square bale or a ton of supplement or a bushel of corn or a bag of feed, those can all be changed and specified. If you've got a water test report, this is also something that you can enter your data in when you're using the program. But I'm going to let Dale handle this one more when he gets into his slides. The other thing that we can do with this program is, I'm just going to back out of it a little bit. I'm going to, yeah, I've got a, where's, I canceled, where's my home page? Sorry, I'm gonna bounce out backwards and come back in again. So if we were going into this one here, we looked at the demo. There's a quick start guide available as well. Basically, if you've never used the program before and you want to use it, this is a great way to get started. How to do things within the program. And the schematic on the third page here is basically what you're doing is how does the program work? What are the necessary steps in the pink? What you're doing for a first-time user with the grays, and then it just carries you through how the program works. And that seems to be a little bit confusing at first, but if you go down into the actual pages within this quick start guide, it'll carry you through step by step. How do you work with the program if you want to use a demo version or if you want to register? It'll show you what to do. The registration, of course, is the first one we show, how to pay, how to do everything else. But once you get to page 7, it'll give you instructions on how to use the program, what steps you need to follow. And it's all by, you click on the one button and then the next step will show up. It carries you through. No different than using Netflix or not Netflix, but TurboTax or other tax calculation programs where it guides you through what happens. And this is what the quick start guide is all about. The other thing that comes in very handy with this program is Dale's made 16 different video tutorials on how to use the program. Anything from, what is Sheepbytes to how, after you purchase the program, how do you put everything together? And basically, he's given you a active visual way to look at the program rather than working through the quick start guide. You'll probably get the same results. The other thing is the technical reference guide that is available from the program. What does everything mean within the program? What is dry matter? What is as fed? The different protein, or what's the protein types, the units, all the different nutrients and the ratios. It's a fairly complete guide as to what you really want to look at and what you need to do. So that's where I'm going to leave it up to you, Dale. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Ashley or Dale, you can take it back.
Okay, thanks, Barry. So this is where I stopped before, and I guess what we're trying to indicate to you is that there's a lot of self-learning aids built into the program. The quick start guide, the tutorials, the technical reference manual, and so on. But there's also support services available through ALP. So if you have a problem or you actually find a glitch in the program, just contact Ashley there at ALP, and she will direct you appropriately, whether it's to the something in the administration that she covers, whether it's something the programmer has to look after, or if it's something that I can help out with. So we hope that we've got a pretty good technical support service program set up there for you. So I'm a registered user, and in fact, Ashley has set me up with a temporary demonstration account that we'll use today. So the first thing you do once you're have got access to the program is do your login. And you'll see it comes up a little bit, and this is my my temporary one. So you would put in your email address and a password, again, that are registered with ALP, so you've got proper access to it, and then you just touch login and let it work a little bit. Oh, and here's a little commercial, so I'll just get rid of that. Okay, so as I enter the program, this is the first thing we'll see, and Barry touched on this a little bit in the demo version here, but this is an actual live version now that would be similar to what you would be seeing when you purchase the program. I've already added 2 rations here, and but you would probably start off by clicking on your new ration and building a new ration from there. But I've got a few things here. I created these rations on this date. I've given these rations a title, and tells me that this ration here is for mature ewes, maintenance 175 pound body weight. This is for mature ewes, late gestation, last 6 weeks. So I've already created a couple rations here. And then you click on here, and then you can do a number of things with that ration. I can open that ration, which I will do in a moment. I could get rid of it. I could produce ration reports. I could send the ration file to my feed company or my nutritionist who also has Sheepbytes, and they could look it over and make some comments and get back to you. Or finally, I could email a hard copy of a report to somebody. Again, your veterinarian, your feed company person, your consultant, et cetera. So you can do a lot of things with these rations with other people that are on the program as well. So all I'm going to do right now is open the ration. And this is my ration number 2 for late gestation. Mature ewes, again, it tells me what that ration is for, so it's always a reminder there. So this is what we call the ration page, and this would be considered your home screen. Whenever you get lost or confused, you'll see that option to come back to the home screen and get yourself reoriented. And this ration, for example, I've already built with alfalfa grass hay, and I've pulled these feeds in from the feeds table that we'll demonstrate in a few minutes. But I've got 3 feeds here that I've balanced this ration with to make it work. So it's a little bit of trial and error. You know, you might start off with 5 pounds there, and you see a red pop up down here saying, well, do you really think they can eat that much? And if it's in red, you can see that the recommended dry matter intake is 4.34, but now you're supplying 5.48 over a pound extra. You know, the literature would say they're probably not going to eat that much. So that's how you do the substitution method. So I go back to 4. Barley grain, I've got 1.2 pounds in there, and I did that to balance the ration. I've got a little bit of mineral. So is the ration balanced? Well, if you look down here in the results section, you'll see that we've got all these nutrients again listed that we've got up above here. Let me just change this one here, as Barry did, to the toggle over to digestible energy and TDN, or unit energy unit measurements that probably most people are a little bit more familiar with. So in this results section here, we've got a line called recommended nutrients per day. And that's what's recommended for this 175 pound ewe that's in late gestation and hopefully bearing twins. That's all the scientific wisdom, I guess, that's gone into this that indicates that this is probably in the neighborhood of what we should be providing for nutrients. And you can see there's quite a bit of completeness to it. We've got all the major minerals, trace minerals, vitamin A, D, and E. We've even got a couple, yeah, we've got a couple columns on the end here for NDF, neutral detergent fiber, effective NDF, digestible intake protein. And I guess because our faces are here, you probably can't see the rest of it over there. But it's a real complete nutrient breakdown for a person that's got the knowledge and the appreciation for those measurements. Then we see below it the supplied in feed. So we just went through what's recommended. This ration above that we've balanced, 4 pounds of hay, 1.2 pounds of barley, 0.05 pounds of mineral. This is what it supplies. And we're going along here and we can see green is good, green is good. We're exceeding the number. DE requirement was 5.81. We've got a little bit more at 5.94. Our dry matter is 4.61 supplied. It's a little bit above the 4.56 that this says is maximum, and that's why it's got a yellow there and not a red. We get over here and we're seeing, okay, well, this ration's got quite a bit of surplus protein in it, and that's why it showed up as red. Now, it can be red for basically two reasons. It could be higher or lower in nutrient content, or it could be an item that you want to look at seriously from a cost perspective. So providing 282 grams is not going to kill the ewe when her requirement is 177. But if you're buying that and supplementing to get to that level of protein, then you're wasting money. So a red is say, let's think about this. Are we putting anything extra? No, we've pretty well got farm grown feeds. Your hay is pretty good quality at 14% protein, your barley at 12.5. And so that protein level is there from the natural feedstuffs you're providing. There's nothing else you're adding there. So you're not buying to get to that 13.5, but it does say that, you could be a little bit lower if you had to be. And your calcium is there at green. Your phosphorus is green. You can see that we've got over double the amount of calcium that we require, but it's still green. And again, calcium is a cheap thing to provide. It's a safe thing to provide. So we've put a little bit of, I think, what I would call nutritional wisdom into the use of these yellow, green, and red boxes. Here's our cost per head per day, and it's also repeated up there. So it's there in two places to give you an eye on your cost. And again, so we just go through that and we can see that we're pumping along here. We're pretty good. We've got a red for copper. Recommended nutrients per day is 13. We're supplying only 10 in the feed. And so we're a little bit short on copper. And of course, when I use the word copper, most sheepmen's ears perk up. But this just tells us that, the sheep do have a requirement for copper. Magnesium is red because it's, more than double. But again, there's very little magnesium. There's a little bit in the supplement, but most of your magnesium is coming from your alfalfa grass hay. So you're getting a good shot of magnesium there. Again, the red says, look at this, but your nutritional wisdom will tell you, okay, it's there. It's not going to be a concern nutritionally. It's not going to cause any health issues. Potassium is one that's always going to be high if you've got any forages. You can see a potassium level of 1.65% in your alfalfa hay, and we only need about a third of that really. So we've always got surplus potassium in our forages. So there we've done that. We've gone along. We can see we've got salt, vitamin A, etc. So we're looking at recommended nutrients versus the amount supplied. We've got the ratios in the bottom here, and those tend to be for people that are got a pretty good handle on their nutrition and want to look at some of the details here and see where they're at. So that's the home page, and that's the one that most people spend most of the time on. What we've got here, though, where did we get the requirements that we've put in down here? Well, that's from our animal. So if we click on the animal, we go to the animal requirements page, and here's where we can select different classes of animals. Mature ewes is what we've selected here. We've got requirements for growing lambs, finishing lambs, early weaned lambs, rams, replacement ewe lambs, and ram lambs. So there's quite a selection there of requirements and stages of production. We've got body weight we can put in there. We can put in a prolificacy number. In this case, I suggested this breed of ewe is going to have a pretty good chance of hitting a 200% lamb crop. And then we've got a body condition score, 1 to 5 body condition score. We can put in environmental conditions, full fleece, approximate temperatures, wool condition, dry. And although there's not a lot of good scientific data here to help us with all this, there is at some point in time when we get extra wind speed or lower temperatures, it'll add some energy to the requirements. You can store your animal settings by hitting the save button, and then you can access those again later. So you don't have to remember, well, what rate of view did I use, or what rate of gain did I want, that type of thing. So then I bounce back to my ration page going home. Barry showed you briefly the feeds table, and we've got feeds in all these different categories: byproducts, chaff, fats, et cetera, et cetera. So quite a selection of feeds. This library of feeds comes out of the Alberta Agriculture Soil and Feed Testing Lab, probably 25 years of average analysis data. And so there's pretty good numbers behind most of these feeds. And then, as Barry pointed out, you can select feeds from this list, or you can add your own feeds in there that we'll get to at a later time. But you can see this hay at the top of the list is in my ration page, and that's why it says in. And if I wanted to click barley green feed, it would show up on my ration page when I go back here. There's barley green feed at the bottom. Feeding information helps us. These are what we call management issues that we'll talk about. We've even got a built-in yardage calculator there if you want to track it. So again, we feel that the feeding program, without consideration for costs, is useful, but it's much more useful if you look at the cost aspects of your feeding program. This is a really useful feature. You can put in a water analysis from your well water and come up with how that affects the final ration. So here, this little button here shows that my water analysis is not considered in the supplied feeds line. But if I have a water analysis in there and push that button there, then the water analysis would be supplied in feed and water. You can see it changed to supplied in feed and water. So especially if you're looking at some places where you've got high sulfates in your well water, for example, what implications does that have? How does that add to the sulfur number over here? And at sometimes it can get high enough to where sulfur is a biological or a metabolic concern. So that's water. Notes, you can add notes. There's a calculator built up. And we will, in the next one, go over the different reports. But you can see, once we've created rations, then we have a number of ways we can kick out reports or save them as a PDF file to our library. So there's lots of different options here and things that we can use for this program for. Okay, let me take a drink of water here. So we're about a half an hour in here. So let me take the ratios page off here just to give us a little bit more white space here and work with that. So that kind of is an overview of the capabilities without showing each one of these ones in detail. One of the things that you'll want to play with if you do sign up for a student copy to use over the next couple of weeks, one of the things you'll want to do is add your own feeds. So there is an option here to create a new feed, and you've got then a blank page. Nothing filled out in any of these cells here at all. And it's fine. You can rename that feed. You can call this I can't spell my own name here. Dale's alfalfa. And then I could go ahead and proceed to put that in there. I could, it's a hay, so I can select hay. My dry matter test, so I would be putting my feed in there based on probably a feed test result. And I can go ahead and populate all these different cells. You only have to put in one energy measurement. So if my TDN value on this hay was 62%, it tells me immediately, it converts that to digestible energy, net energy of maintenance, net energy of gain. So there's a built-in calculator there. And so I can go ahead and say, this is Dale's a really good farmer and he's got 20% second cut protein in his alfalfa hay, etc. But what I prefer to do, I'm just going to cancel out of this. What I prefer to do when I'm adding a new feed is I want to go down and pick from the library a feed that's pretty close to that feed. And the benefit of that is that we've got average analysis data for these feeds, and we can take, and it can be probably provide, or sometimes provide more data than what your feed test report does. So for example, many labs test, charge an extra price, a cost for sulfur testing or for selenium testing and so on. And those can start to add up. So you might want to, what I like to do is pick out a feed. So this was Dale's hay was in Alberta, it was an early bloom. So I pick that and I create a copy. And now I've got all this populated, and the ones that I do have data from a feed test analysis for, I will change to reflect that data. But this is now Dale's alfalfa hay, Dale's alfalfa hay. But now I've got things that wouldn't show up on a normal feed test. For example, like DIP, degradable intake protein, undegradable intake protein. Probably don't see an analysis for affected NDF. You might not see molybdenum and so on. So in the absence of data from a feed test on your own feed, you're relying on the average analysis data, which is better than nothing. If you want to spend $150 and get a complete analysis on your feed, you're certainly welcome to do that. One thing they won't do is test for iodine. We don't have any labs that test for iodine, so we have to rely on supplementing that. So then I'm going to create this feed. I made a mistake here. Let's try this again. So now I want to save this feed. And it shows up at the top here, Dale's alfalfa feed. So when I have created a feed, you can see that it's now shows up as in green lettering and bold. So it's no longer a standard library feed, it's one I've created. You can't change these library feed stuffs. You can't go in here and change the protein, calcium and phosphorus in these feeds and have it stored back into the program. It won't store a change to the library feed. But you can put anything you want in there in terms of that particular feed stuff. So now I'll add that in there just for fun. And if we go back to ration, you'll see Dale's alfalfa hay is now there available for me to use in my ration. The other thing that you might do in the next week is want to put in a supplement, for example. And we've got some supplements in here, finisher, a starter, a 32% lamb supplement, and so on. The thing you need to know though, let's again make a copy and we'll create the copy. Oops. And we'll call this. So we create the copy and they're up here. I created it twice. And then we go back in and edit it. Now, normally you can see a little red message down here. All nutrients must be entered on a dry matter basis. So it's working in dry matter and converting it back to as fed. However, your supplements and your commercial feeds, the tag is usually on an as fed basis. So you do go back in here and you can enter your feeds on an as fed basis. And this would be information that would come right off your tag or label as you would on the feedstuffs. Because you don't have the dry matter content on a label that you would have on a feed test report. When you save it, it reverts back to dry matter basis. So don't think you haven't saved it. It's still there, but now it's displaying it on a dry matter basis. You said, well, that was a 32% supplement. How come it's now 35.5? Well, because it's converted automatically to a dry matter basis. So just keep that in mind. The other thing, if you create a feed, if you don't give it a dry matter content, it won't save your ration for you. We have had people call in about that, and we say, did you put dry matter content in there? Good. Okay. So if I was going to go back to the file, I'm going to save this ration, and now it's saved there again. If I wanted to start a new ration from scratch, as you probably would do, you've basically got one feed there with no amount in the ration. And you start from zero. You can get rid of this feed. If that's not something you're going to have, then you basically remove that feed. Are you sure you want to remove a feed from the ration? It always gives you a little prompt. There, so you've got a clean slate basically to start off with your own ration. And the first thing I would do is pick an animal, and I want a early gestation ewe, etc. And I'll leave the rest there. We get back to ration, and there, that's her description up there. And now I want to add some feeds, and I want to add some Dale's hay, and maybe some brome hay, and go back to the ration to check. There they are. When I start feeding hay, I just automatically start with 4 pounds of anything as a place to start. You don't have to be right, because if you're not right, this will tell you, and you can go back and modify it. So I start with 4 pounds. I could probably feed 4.5. It says I'm a little bit low. So that's what we call the trial and error, or the substitution method. So now I'm getting some greens showing up here. It looks like I've got enough energy from that brome hay. It's a pretty good level of TDN, enough for early gestation. But I am lacking now in phosphorus and some other trace minerals. I'm lacking in vitamin A and so on. And so then I want to go back to the feeds table, and I want to go to a mineral, and I want to pick up a mineral with salt, because I always like to feed minerals as a complete package. Here's my 1-to-1 mineral. Again, I just start with 0.05 pounds, and you can see what that does. So it's brought up my phosphorus. It's balanced for my phosphorus. My copper's still low here, it tells me, and you want to talk to your nutritionist about how you can supplement copper. Sulfur's a little bit low, so where are we going to get sulfur from? You know, those are the kinds of things you have to ask. The Dale's hay was quite a bit higher in sulfur than the brome hay, so that's why we're a little bit short on sulfur there. So your vitamins are coming from this vitamin mineral pack. Here it's got a good shot of vitamin A, D, and so we're meeting the vitamin A. We're high on vitamin D. We're very low on vitamin E. And again, that's a discussion from a nutritional perspective on how we can live with that. We've got selenium. We're actually about 3 times the amount of selenium, because we've got a good level of selenium here. So that's basically how we go about balancing a ration. It's that trial and error method, or the substitution method. Then I can save this ration, save as, enter a valid title for this ration. Okay, so I didn't have a title here. So this is early gestation. And now I can save it. File name. Early gest, and I can create. So now I've got that ration there, as well as the other 2 that were there. So those of you that sign up and want the to use the student accounts, this is the kind of things you can do. You can save your rations. You can play with them at a later date to fine tune them. You can look at options. You can say, okay, well, this ration was based on brome hay. What if I've got a really good buy on oat green feed instead of brome hay? Would that work in there, and that type of thing? But to make good use of the student accounts over the next 10 days or so, you want to save some rations in there. And if you do, as a student, save it into your student account. If you subsequently buy the program within a certain time frame, then it'll have these rations here for you. So you haven't lost your student work, so to speak, if you do subsequently buy the program. So now we're at 6:44, Ashley. Do we have any questions in the question page?
I don't see any questions in here yet, Dale.
Okay, so let me keep going then. Let me take this late gestation ration and show a few more features of what we can do here. So now I'm back on my rations list page. I want to open my ration. And so I've got this ration here. So I've got some other ingredients here that I'm not using at the present time. They wouldn't show up in any reports. If they're not being used here, they wouldn't show up. So as Barry mentioned, we can go through here and do some what ifs. So this mineral here that we've got in here already would be a good source if you wanted to, if you had enough sheep and you could get a custom made mineral. If you know that you're a little bit short on an item here, you could, so for example, we're a little bit short on copper. So instead of the standard amount of copper in here that was, where is my copper? Here we are. So instead of 25 ppm of copper, parts per million milligrams per kilogram, you can see that that doesn't result in enough copper. So I could get perhaps a custom formulation, or I could look around for another mineral that has twice that amount of copper. And doesn't make much difference, have to go maybe to 200. And you can see now my copper has turned green. So the standard product off the shelf had 25. If we put 200 in that particular product, then we're meeting our copper requirements. Selenium at 30, that is the highest that they can legally go in that particular product. But you can see that it's pretty high there, and we probably don't need it for these these used in late gestation. The one thing to keep in mind, though, if we did change and use the same mineral for lactation, then we could make good use of that extra selenium. So again, that extra selenium, where total concentration is 0.35, it's not going to kill them, but it does show you that it's quite a bit higher than what they would absolutely need. So feeding information. Actually, let's go to feed mixes here. So let's say I'm self-feeding my alfalfa hay in a round bale feeder, but I want to limit feeding my barley, and I would like to force my mineral into the feeding system. So if I put a check mark beside both of those, I can create a mix. And I call this grain mix. I'll give it a letter. And you can see here's the combination of the mixes. So here's the as fed right from the ration page, 0.05 pounds, 1.2 pounds. This is the amount of dry matter, but Barry, as Barry correctly said, we usually focus on as fed. If you wanted to mix this together into a mixture, it would be 4% mineral salt, the one-to-one mineral, with 96% barley. So you blend that together and you save that. And now we're feeding of the grain mix, 1.25 pounds of grain mix. We're no longer showing anything in terms of the barley grain itself or the one-to-one mineral. We've put it into this grain mix, and that tells us we now have to feed 1.25 pounds of grain mix. So it can be more complex. I can put a TMR together that would have 8 feeds in there, for example, and show what that mix is. I can print it out in the report section that we'll get to next week and hand it off to the guy, my feed tech that's running my feed mixer sort of thing, and go from there. So again, we've built this for very basic and elementary use, balancing a simple 3-ingredient ration, but it can be used for a very sophisticated purpose as well.
Dale, we got 2 questions that came through.
Sure.
So the first one is, if you feed mineral free choice, do you just adjust the amounts in your ration to make it balance regardless of how much the sheep actually eat?
Yeah, so 0.05 pounds sounds like we're being very precise. From experience, I know that depending on the salt content in the water and a few other things, but I know that that's an approximate amount that they would consume on a free choice basis. But free choice feeding as opposed to force feeding is always sort of second best. Sometimes it's a necessary evil, but we should try to manage it. You knowing that your target is 0.05 pounds is the place to start with free choice feeding. 0.05 pounds is 22 grams, times 100 U's is 2.2 kilograms a day, sort of thing. So you should have those kinds of numbers in mind, that how much they should be eating on a free choice basis, and try to limit them to that amount. Sometimes you might actually have to encourage them to get to that amount. But free choice feeding is a common practice for sure.
And the second question is, if I want to milk ewes, is it necessary to know the net energy lactation? And do you have that in the program?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Well, pardon me, we don't. We have a net energy of gain in the program, and we use that as in the same fashion as net energy. So if I want to go to an animal and go into lactation, what we do here is here's early lactation, 6 weeks. The only controls we have are the number of lambs. We can go up to 3 lambs there, which would be maximum for a meat breed. So this was designed for meat breeds as opposed to milking breeds. And you'd have to fiddle around with it to make it work for the milk breeds. So now I've got lactation requirements. You can see that they've gone quite a bit up there. But we don't have, if we switch this back, it's an NEG value as opposed to an NL value.
Dale, if I may, when we put this together, you, Susan, and myself, we included the lactation energy requirement in the gain profile. So it is there, but it's just hidden.
Thanks, Barry. Is that all? The questions right now? Good. Okay, so Ashley, let's turn it back to you, and you can describe what you've done with student accounts and what's coming up in the next session. I guess, or I could describe what's coming up in the next session if you like.
Sure. Essentially for everyone who has registered, either if it was just for this workshop or if you already registered for both of them, I did send everyone their own student account login information. So it is good, I believe, up until April 18th. So that way, for those of you who only registered for this session, if you do still want to attend next Thursday for more hands-on practice session, you're more than welcome to. Or if you just kind of want to try and work on some of the rations yourself in the program, if you are unable to make that. So that's how I've got everything set up for participants for right now.
Good. So we are, normally we run a workshop, an in-person workshop, so we would have up to maybe 20 people sitting at their laptops in a classroom setting, and let them play around with it, make mistakes, ask questions, that type of thing. And Barry and I, or whoever doing the workshop, would walk around and be able to have some one-on-one time with people who are actually one-on-one working with their own feeds, their own sheep kind of requirements, that type of thing. So that's what we're trying to mimic, I guess, or duplicate in the session next week. So there should be, hopefully you'll come back with some questions or some issues that you've had challenges with, that type of thing. The one thing to keep in mind is that when you may never come up with a ration that has no red cells left in it because of the nature of the nutrient content in feed. So don't be frustrated by that. But again, a red draws your attention and your thought process around, well, is that red going to be a concern or not? Do I have to talk to somebody that will tell me if that's a concern or not? Do I have to seek additional information? But that's what we're going to try to do next week. We'll just kind of quickly review ration balancing. We'll go into some of the advanced features. So we'll look at the feeding information and the cost of feeding that we can calculate on that. We'll look at the report generation aspects of it and show you what kind of reports can be generated. The ration summary report gives you complete inventory control if you've selected the right rations and so on. And how to print reports too. It's not hard to print reports, but there is a bit of a routine to go through. And then a few other things on how we can use it to create supplements, premixes, that type of thing. So if that works, for you. Any more questions at this time?
There was one that came through and it just asks if you can send a link to the nutrition info or book that you had mentioned at the beginning of the presentation.
Yeah, so let me put that back up again. So again, there's Barry's email address and my email address. If you've got questions this coming week, we're both busy and productive people, but we'll try to make time to answer those questions for you. And there is Dr. Steve Mason's sheep feeds and feeding.
It's not showing up on the screen, Dale. It's still the ration program.
Oh, what do I do? Well, yeah, it says I'm screen sharing.
If you want, Dale, you can just, if you want to flip email that has that, and then I'll send an email out to all the participants just that has the recording from this workshop to rewatch if they need, along just with your contact information. Oh, there you go. It's right up there now.
Good. So I had to hit new share button. So yeah, so Steve's offering a little bit of a discount here. You can see he stroked out the original price and is giving people a discount on that product. In addition to being a technical, PhD kind of a guy, he's also a very effective writer. Like his use of language and so on is really good. His setting up of the book he's had lots of experience doing work for Alberta Milk, the Dairymen's Association, over the last 15 years, and really enjoys writing and publishing. You can get this actually. This is the hard copy version, but he's talking about coming out with a digital version that people can load on their computer as well. So yeah, it's really a well done product from many different perspectives.
And I just saw there was another question that came in asking if you already have a Sheepbytes account, is it necessary to use the student accounts for the next session? And no, you can use your own account if you've already got one.
Good. Barry, any last comments? Anything we've missed?
The only thing I'm going to suggest, Dale, is if the people have questions or if they have a ration they want to send to us by email, and we can look at it before next Thursday, and they've got a question about it, then we can be prepared and have some answers before we get going.
Yeah, and we talked in pounds here. You can go totally metric if you wish. This is, if you look at this thing here, we can switch display units. So we've got Canadian is what we've been using, which is a bit of a hybrid. You'll notice we're talking grams in some places and pounds in others. But you can go totally metric, and there is a US version that's all in imperial units. So you can use whichever one you're comfortable with. Here's the metric version, for example. So it'll come back with the same, if my line speed is not too slow here, it'll come back with the same ration, but we're now in metric. So we're talking kilograms over here. But we're still the same down here. We still kept all the requirements versus supplied in grams and so on. So milligrams, just because it was so much easier to do that way. We can also, again, it's behind our faces here, but we can also use this to meter out or adequately feed medications like ionophores, Bovatec, for example, or drugs. We can also track nitrate levels. If you've got nitrate result in some of your green feed, for example, and you want to see what the safe level of feeding is, it'll show you your nitrates. You can see here, down here, it's one of the ratios that we've tracked right here. So good.
Are there any other questions from participants this evening? Okay, well, thank you to Dale, Barry, and to all of our participants who joined us this evening. This concludes the workshop. I will be sending an email to everyone who registered for this evening's session that'll include a link to where you can access the workshop recording.